Hey guys, I want to talk about protein a little bit here today. Specifically, what is it, why it's important in our diet, does it matter where we get it from, and how much of it do we actually need? Now, when it comes to the three macronutrients, which are fat, carbs, and protein, rarely do you hear somebody complain about not getting enough carbs or not getting enough fat. But a lot of us, and rightfully so, are afraid of not getting enough protein, especially if we're trying to migrate to a healthier, more plant-based diet, which more and more of us seem to be doing these days. And invariably, when that happens, the question of how am I going to get my protein, am I going to get enough, or whatnot, almost always comes up. So we want to address that today. But again, we want to dial back a little bit and just go over some basics about protein and then move into sources and how much we actually need. So again, protein is a very important macronutrient. It is vital to the functioning and strength of our body, from the cellular level to muscles and whatnot. We absolutely need protein in our diets. So the importance of getting enough of it is real. It is absolutely real. Now, there are essential amino acids that are the building blocks of proteins that our body needs, that we have to get from dietary sources. So anytime we hear the word essential, that means that we need to get it externally. Our body doesn't make it. Now, there are a multitude of other amino acids that our bodies actually produce, but we don't produce all of what we need. So we need to get some from our diet. Okay, and a complete protein is a food that contains all of these essential amino acids. So those are just some terms and some very basics about protein to understand. Now, where does protein come from, and does it matter where we get it? Now, protein, again, made of amino acids, originally comes from plants, all of it. The protein we get from animal foods is really just recycled plant protein. Those animals got the protein and the amino acids they needed for their species, also from plants, right? We are only eating animals that eat plants. We're not eating other carnivorous animals for the most part. I mean, unless it's some delicacy somewhere, but here in America, that's pretty much what we're eating is herbivores. Now, that's a very important distinction. The protein, if it all originates from plants, and we're only getting recycled protein from the animals, do we really need that protein, that form of protein? And it's a great question, and it's one that we really need to think about, because when we're eating the protein, recycled protein that we're getting from the animal foods, we're getting a lot more than that. Yes, we're getting protein, but we're getting a lot of the hormones, the antibiotics that were given to those animals. Those animals have likely been fed genetically modified grains that were sprayed and survived the spraying of herbicides and pesticides. So we're getting that residue as well. If the meats are processed, we're getting a ton of sodium, and in all animal foods, we're getting to some degree cholesterol that we don't need. Our body makes all the cholesterol it needs, saturated fats, again, the sodium, and then dyes and nitrates and all of these other things, and really no other benefit. It's not loaded with vitamins and minerals that we get from plant-based foods. So really, if we're eating a lot of animal foods, we're doing it because we feel we're going to get an adequate amount of protein. Now, is that protein from the animal foods, that recycled protein, the same as the protein we would get if we ate the plants directly, or the seeds, the sprouts? Now, when I'm talking about plant-based proteins, I'm talking about fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, whole grains, things of that nature, things that are a product of plants. So their studies indicate that the protein that we actually are getting from the animal foods isn't giving us the benefit that we think. It is stressing our liver and kidneys, the primary filtration systems of our blood and our digestive system. So it's actually leaching calcium and causing the kidney to lose calcium, and is a contributor to osteoporosis, which is a weakening of our bones and making our bones brittle. And we see this in all of our analyses of dairy, how the whole dairy milk for strong bones has really been turned upside down as more and more studies show a higher incidence of hip fractures in those that actually drink more milk. So turning that upside down, it's not that alarming that when we look at meats from animals, that too is causing the leaching of calcium and the stress on our kidneys and liver and causing osteoporosis. Now, that's pretty incredible. Now, on the flip side, the proteins from plant foods are much different. They are easily absorbable, digestible, processed, assimilated in the human body. And that's just a fact. Now, what are some good examples of high protein plant-based foods? Because if we're not going to get our protein from meat, and again, it's not the kind of protein that was made for humans, it was the kind of protein that was made and formulated by amino acids for pigs and cows and turkeys and whatnot, not for the mammals that we are. Now, some really good alternatives, plant-based, beans. Beans have a ton of protein. All fruits and vegetables have some amount of protein, especially leafy green vegetables. So we can get a lot of protein from them. Grains, amaranth, wild rice, brown rice, quinoa, tons of protein. Broccoli is another one. Avocados, even fruits, like I said, like bananas and whatnot, all have some protein in it. Now, if we're eating a wide, diverse diet of whole foods, right? Those that have been unadulterated and unprocessed, even if they're cooked or lightly cooked, and there's a lot of raw whole foods involved, we're going to get all the protein we need. So now that leads to the question of, okay, how much protein do we need? Does anybody know? We look for foods that are high in protein, but do we know if we're getting enough, or do we know if maybe we're getting too much? We would argue that we're getting more than enough protein than we actually need. And even if we're getting it from a plant-based diet, it's our belief, and there are studies to back this up, if we're eating a diverse diet of whole foods, we are going to exceed the amount of protein that we need. Now, for a bodybuilder or for highly athletic, or we're looking to build strength and mass, then we just need to up our protein, but we can do that with plant-based diets. There's a movie out now called Game Changers that's dedicated basically exactly to that point. The strongest man in the world is a vegan. So it's pretty incredible, and we're not getting the overload on our organs from the animal protein. So how much do we need? On estimate, and there's calculators that I'll include when the video is over, that you can kind of estimate how much you need. And I think that these are all wildly overestimates of what we need. Now, why do I say that? When you look at the human milk, mother's milk, as compared to all other mammals' mother's milk, the composition of protein in human milk, mother's milk, is the lowest of all mammals. So we don't need as much as we believe. And another thing is, there's no term for a protein deficiency. Like, it's not like, we're deficient in vitamin C or something like that, where there were actually names given to those types of diseases like scurvy or Barbary. For protein deficiency, there's no common term that you hear thrown around. So for something that we're so afraid of not getting enough of, very rarely do we hear or see a diagnosis of low protein. We believe that to be protein deficient, you almost need to be nutrient deficient, i.e., calorie deficient, or just not getting enough food in general. And we believe that, and we've seen that. Now, again, lowest protein of any mammal, no real discernible diagnosis of protein deficiency. So, we really want to point out that the hype about protein has been something that has been carried on from generation to generation. And again, it is incredibly important. We don't want to diminish that. But the almost phobia over whether we're getting enough and whatnot, we would argue is really not all that justified. Not the extent that it's gotten to. Again, all the protein we need, our body will end up eliminating a lot of protein. If our bodies are running on carbohydrates, We need the protein, like we said, for the structure, for enzymes or proteins. They're incredibly important. Getting them from plants, getting them assimilated into the body easily, digested easily with other good raw or lightly cooked foods or healthy pastas and grains, and that kind of diet is going to give us all the protein we need. So just want to point out that where we get our protein from is very important, and the proteins formed from amino acids for animals were made for those animals. They're not readily accepted by our bodies, and this, we believe, is a basis and a major contributing factor to most, if not all, of the chronic disease in this country. And the level of chronic disease in this country is way out of control, and most of it is preventable. And if we try to take back control of our health by eliminating processed foods, eliminating a lot of these animal foods and cutting them down dramatically or cutting them out entirely, I guarantee we will see an incredible, rapid improvement in our health, not just in our weight, but in our vitality, our energy. So that's our quick blurb on protein. At least I hope it was quick. And if you have any questions or anything, please pop them in here. I'm going to attach a couple really helpful articles that will elaborate a little bit more on what I'm saying so that you can see that I just didn't make this up. And along with some good sources of protein and a calculator on how to perhaps calculate an estimate of how much protein you should actually have. All right.